I wasn't always suspicious. That's the part people don't understand. When I met her, I was just tired. Tired of building. Tired of proving. Tired of being the successful one in every room. My name is Daniel. By 32, I'd built 2 logistics companies from the ground up. Sold one. Kept one. Invested aggressively. Real estate. Tech startups. Commercial warehouses. On paper, I was doing very well. In real life, I was lonely. The kind of lonely that creeps up on you in penthouse silence. The kind where your phone only buzzes for business. Then I met her. Her name was Sophia. And she was magnetic. Not just beautiful, though she was. It was the way she looked at me. Like I wasn't Daniel the founder. Like I wasn't a walking net worth. Like I was just Daniel. The first red flag? She asked what I did for a living within 10 minutes of meeting me. But I brushed it off. Everyone asks that. The second red flag? Her interest deepened the moment she realized I owned my own company. Her posture shifted. Her voice softened. Her hand lingered on my arm just a little longer. But attraction can blind you. And I wanted to believe. For the first few months, she was perfect. Supportive. Affectionate. Attentive. She laughed at my dumb jokes. She listened when I talked about supply chain headaches. She'd cook dinner in my kitchen and tell me she loved how driven I was. And every time she said she was proud of me, something in my chest healed. But little things started stacking up. She hated splitting bills. Said it felt ungentlemanly. She casually suggested upgrading her car, jokingly, of course. She'd send me screenshots of luxury handbags and say, one day when we're married. Married. She introduced that word early. Too early. 6 months in, she started talking about moving in. 8 months in, she started showing me engagement rings for fun. And every time I hesitated, just slightly, her mood would shift. Cold. Withdrawn. Distant. Until I reassured her. That's when I started testing something. One evening, over dinner, I told her my second company was struggling. Not collapsing, just tightening. I said a few big clients pulled contracts. Cash flow was tight. I might need to liquidate one property. I watched her face carefully. The smile froze. Just for a second. Then came the concern, but it felt rehearsed. Oh no, baby, that's okay. We'll get through it. But the next few weeks? The energy changed. She stopped talking about marriage. Stopped sending luxury wishlist screenshots. Started spending more time with friends. I didn't confront her. I just observed. Then came the night that changed everything. She fell asleep next to me. Her phone buzzed. Normally, I wouldn't look. But something, instinct, maybe, nudged me. The message preview popped up. Is he still loaded or what? I'm not waiting forever. My stomach didn't drop. It didn't twist. It went cold. I unlocked the phone. Yes, I know. Violation. But betrayal hits differently when you feel it forming. The chat was with her best friend, Vanessa. Message after message. She says the business is tight. That better be temporary. I'm not marrying potential. I'm marrying stability. If he loses money, I'm out. I've invested almost a year. Invested. Like I was a stock. My hands were steady. Too steady. And then came the one that burned into my brain. I'm securing my future. I'm not stupid. That night, lying beside her, I stared at the ceiling and realized something terrifying. She didn't love me. She loved the version of me she thought guaranteed comfort. And the worst part? She thought I was blind. The next morning, I acted normal. I kissed her forehead. Made coffee. Talked about wedding venues. Yes. Wedding venues. Because I made a decision that night. If she wanted security, I would give her a lesson in it. Over the next 3 months, I became the perfect fiancé. Attentive. Generous. I recovered financially. Told her the contract stabilized. Investors came through. Her excitement returned instantly. Suddenly she was glowing again. Talking about destination honeymoons. Posting subtle engagement hints online. I proposed on a private rooftop overlooking the city. She cried. Said yes. Called it the happiest day of her life. But while she was busy planning flowers and seating charts, I was meeting with lawyers. Quietly. Carefully. Strategically. I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse her. I didn't argue. I planned. And 3 days before the wedding, I signed every major asset I owned into a trust. Not in my name. Not reachable through marriage. Legally airtight. If she married me for money, she was about to marry a man who, on paper, owned absolutely nothing. And I made sure of one more thing. No prenup. Because she would have expected that. She never expected this. And on the wedding day? As she walked toward me in white, smiling like she'd just secured her future, I couldn't help but wonder. How long would that smile last once she realized she'd married a man worth zero? The wedding night was quiet. Too quiet. Not because it was romantic. Because I was observing. Sophia was glowing. Floating, almost. She kept calling it our beginning. Kept saying how secure she felt. How proud she was to be my wife. Secure. That word again. We checked into the honeymoon suite, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Champagne. White roses. Soft music humming in the background. She wrapped her arms around my neck. You know, she whispered, I always knew you'd take care of me. I smiled. Always, I said. And I meant it. Just not in the way she thought. The first week of marriage was flawless. She played the role beautifully. Posting photos. Captioning them with words like blessed and forever protected. Protected. But protection works both ways. 3 weeks in, the first test came. She brought up joint accounts. Casually. Like it had just occurred to her. Babe, it just makes sense. We're married now. Transparency, right? Transparency. The irony almost made me laugh. I leaned back on the couch and nodded slowly. Of course. I'll send you the account summaries. Her eyes lit up. Not with love. With calculation. That night, I emailed her exactly what she asked for. Personal checking, modest balance. Savings, average. No visible major holdings. Because technically, they weren't in my name anymore. The next morning, she sat at the kitchen island staring at her laptop. Scrolling. Refreshing. Scrolling again. Her jaw tightened. Is this everything? She asked, trying to sound neutral. Yeah, I replied calmly. After restructuring and taxes, that's where we stand personally. Silence. A long, uncomfortable silence. She nodded slowly. Okay, she said. We'll rebuild. But the tone was different now. Less warm. More strategic. Over the next month, the warmth faded. The late-night cuddles? Reduced. The random affection? Rare. The admiration? Gone. And then came the arguments. About lifestyle. About downgrading expectations. About how she thought we'd be further by now. Further. As if I'd failed her business plan. One night, she snapped. I married you because you were stable, Daniel. I didn't sign up to struggle. There it was. Not love. Not partnership. A contract in her mind. I stayed calm. Struggle? We live in a luxury condo. That's rented, she shot back. I thought you owned properties. I held her gaze. I did. Her breathing changed. What do you mean, did? I stood slowly, walked to my office drawer, and pulled out a folder. Clean. Organized. Professional. I placed it on the table between us. Inside were legal documents. Trust agreements. Transfer confirmations. Corporate restructuring filings. Her eyes scanned the first page. Then the second. Then she flipped faster. What is this? She asked, voice thin. Asset protection, I said quietly. All major holdings were transferred before the wedding. Transferred where? Into an irrevocable trust. She blinked. For who? For future security. That doesn't answer my question. It's not supposed to. Her face drained of color. You don't own anything, she whispered. Not personally. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. You tricked me, she said. I tilted my head. Did I? Her breathing became uneven. You let me believe. I let you believe what you assumed. She stood up so fast the chair scraped loudly across the marble floor. This is insane. What happens if we divorce? There it was. Not, how could you? Not, why would you? But what happens if we divorce? I folded my hands calmly. If we divorce, you'd be entitled to half of what I personally own. Her lips trembled. And that is? I held her gaze. Almost nothing. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. You can't do that, she whispered. I already did. She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. Because the man she thought she married, the open wallet, the financial guarantee, never existed. I gave up things for you, she said weakly. Like what? I asked quietly. Her mouth opened. Closed. Nothing came out. Because she hadn't given up anything. She had invested time. Expecting returns. And now the market had crashed. That night, she slept facing away from me. No touching. No warmth. No security. Just distance. Over the next few weeks, I watched her unravel. She made subtle calls. Met with a lawyer, I found the business card in her purse. Started asking indirect questions about trust beneficiaries. But here's the part she didn't understand. I didn't remove the money. I removed access. And access requires loyalty. One evening, she confronted me again. You don't trust me. I looked at her steadily. Should I? She hesitated. That hesitation was louder than any confession. You invaded my privacy, she countered suddenly. You went through my phone, didn't you? I didn't answer. Her silence confirmed it. So this whole marriage is punishment, she demanded. No, I said calmly. This marriage is clarity. She laughed bitterly. You're controlling. No, I replied softly. I'm protected. And for the first time, she looked afraid. Not of me. Of losing control. Because the power dynamic had shifted. She thought she had secured a future. But now? She was legally bound to a man she couldn't leverage. And the realization was eating her alive. But here's the twist. I wasn't done testing her. Because money reveals character. But the absence of money? That exposes truth. And I was about to lower the illusion even further. The shift didn't happen overnight. It decayed. Slowly. Like something rotting beneath polished marble. After the trust revelation, Sophia became strategic. Not loving. Not angry. Strategic. She stopped fighting directly. Instead, she started adapting. More sweetness. More patience. More, I just want us to work. But the warmth felt rehearsed. Like someone adjusting tactics after a failed negotiation. So I tightened the experiment. One evening, over dinner, I sighed heavily and rubbed my temples. She noticed instantly. What's wrong? She asked, leaning forward. I might have to liquidate my remaining liquid reserves, I said carefully. Operational cash buffer. Things are tighter than I expected. Her fork froze mid-air. How tight? I let silence stretch. Worst case? I may need to take a salary cut from the company for a few months. There it was. The flicker. Micro-expression. Panic. It lasted half a second, but I saw it. She set her fork down slowly. Well, maybe we should be realistic then, she said cautiously. About? Our lifestyle. Now we were talking. Within a week, she suggested we cancel the Maldives honeymoon extension. Within 2 weeks, she started browsing apartments, smaller ones. Just in case, she claimed. She framed it like sacrifice. But it wasn't sacrifice. It was recalibration. And then I overheard something I wasn't supposed to. She was on the balcony. Phone pressed tightly to her ear. Vanessa. I'm telling you, he moved everything before the wedding, she whispered sharply. Pause. I don't know where it is. Pause. No, I checked. Longer pause. I'm not staying if there's nothing. Silence. Then the sentence that confirmed everything. I need an exit plan. The words didn't hurt. They clarified. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't explode. I made another decision. If she wanted an exit plan, I would design it for her. 2 days later, I sat her down in the living room. Soft lighting. Calm voice. I've been thinking, I said gently. If things don't stabilize financially, maybe we should consider selling the company. Her head snapped up. Selling? Yes. Before valuation drops. Her eyes widened, but not in sadness. In urgency. How much would it sell for? Direct. No hesitation. Not much right now. Market conditions aren't ideal. She stared at me. Processing. Calculating. And the trust? She asked carefully. What about it? If you sold everything, would it transfer into the trust? No, I replied smoothly. It would cover debts first. The air shifted again. I watched the hope drain. That night, she didn't sleep in our bed. She claimed she had a headache. The next morning, she was distant. Cold. Polite. Like a tenant waiting for lease termination. 3 days later, the bomb dropped. I think we moved too fast, she said over breakfast. I buttered my toast slowly. You think? Yes, she said, exhaling dramatically. We didn't really know each other financially. Financially. Not emotionally. Not spiritually. Financially. I don't want resentment to build, she added. Maybe we should separate while we figure things out. There it was. Exit plan initiated. I nodded calmly. If that's what you want. She blinked. No resistance. No begging. No emotional plea. Just agreement. And that unsettled her more than any argument could have. You're not going to fight for us, she asked. I looked at her quietly. Are we something worth fighting for? Her lips parted. No answer. Because the truth was obvious. She wasn't leaving because I changed. She was leaving because the numbers did. We filed for separation 2 weeks later. Quick. Civil, efficient. She assumed, of course, that once we divorced, she'd at least claim something. But she underestimated 2 things. 1, the trust was airtight. 2, I had documented everything. Every suspicious message. Every recorded financial conversation. Every consultation she made with divorce attorneys before even discussing it with me. Legally, she was walking away with exactly what she signed up for. Me. And on paper? I had nothing. The divorce finalized quietly. No drama. No courtroom theatrics. Just signatures. Cold ink. Final. The day she moved out, she stood in the doorway of the condo and looked at me. "You really went through with this," she said softly. I nodded. "You married me for security," I replied calmly. "I just made sure it wasn't guaranteed." Her jaw tightened. "You think you won?" I stepped closer. "No." I paused. "I think I learned." She left without another word. And for the first time in months, the silence in that penthouse didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. But here's what she didn't know. The trust had a clause. A very specific one. Assets could be reassigned. At my discretion. And 3 weeks after the divorce finalized, I reversed everything. Properties. Company shares. Investments. Back into my name. Clean. Untouched. Intact. The company wasn't struggling. It was thriving. Record profits. New contracts. Expansion underway. The financial instability? An illusion. And then, because life has a dark sense of humor, I saw her again. 6 months later. At a mutual acquaintance's event. She walked in confidently. Designer dress. New man beside her. And when she saw me, she smiled politely. Then someone approached me. A former client. Loud. Enthusiastic. "Daniel. Congratulations on the expansion, man. I heard about the new warehouse acquisition, massive move." Sophia's smile froze. The new man looked confused. "Expansion?" she asked slowly. I met her eyes. Calm. Controlled. "Yeah," I said casually. "Business has never been better." Her face shifted. Subtle. But unmistakable. Calculation. Regret. Realization. And for the first time, she understood. She didn't lose money. She lost access. And access was never about wealth. It was about character. But I wasn't done yet. Because karma works quietly. And patience? Pays compound interest. 6 months. That's how long it took for reality to catch up with her. After that event, word traveled fast. Business circles are small. Smaller than people think. When one person mentions expansion, someone else mentions acquisitions. Then someone else mentions projected revenue. Before you know it, numbers start floating. Big numbers. And Sophia heard them all. I didn't reach out. I didn't gloat. I didn't post flashy photos of new properties or contracts. I just kept winning quietly. Because real power doesn't announce itself. It compounds. 3 weeks after that event, I got the text. "Can we talk?" No emojis. No warmth. Just 5 words. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I missed her. But because I knew exactly why she was texting. I replied 3 hours later. "About what?" Her response came instantly. "Us." Interesting. There hadn't been an us for months. We met at a cafe downtown. Neutral ground. She arrived early. I noticed that immediately. Anxiety does that to people. She looked good. Polished. Composed. But her eyes were restless. Searching. When I sat down, she didn't waste time. "I didn't know," she said softly. "About?" "The company. The expansion. The everything." I took a slow sip of coffee. What difference would it have made? She swallowed. "It changes things." I leaned back. "How?" Her hands tightened around her cup. "I thought you were unstable. Financially. I told you things were tight. You said they were struggling." I nodded. "They were." She stared at me. "That was a lie." "No," I corrected calmly. "It was incomplete." Silence. She looked down. "I made decisions based on what I believed." "And what did you believe?" I asked quietly. Her voice dropped. "That you weren't who I thought you were." "And who was that?" "A secure future." There it was again. Not partner. Not husband. Future. Security. Investment. I leaned forward slightly. "You didn't leave because you were unhappy," I said calmly. "You left because you thought the return wasn't worth the risk." Her jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Her breathing grew heavier. "You manipulated me." "No," I said softly. "I protected myself." She looked at me like she wanted to argue. But deep down, she knew. She gambled. And she lost. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. "I still love you." The words hung in the air. Heavy. But hollow. Love doesn't activate when net worth rises. Love doesn't reappear after profit reports. I studied her face. "You loved comfort," I replied quietly. "You loved stability. You loved the image." She blinked rapidly. "That's not true." "Then why did your feelings change when the numbers did?" Silence. Long crushing silence. She didn't have an answer. Because there wasn't one that didn't expose her. "I made a mistake," she whispered finally. "Yes," I said. "You did." She reached across the table, touching my hand. I'm not asking for money. I didn't pull away. I'm asking for another chance. Here's the thing about regret. It's loudest when opportunity is gone. I gently removed my hand. Why now? I asked. Her eyes glistened. Because I see who you really are. I smiled faintly. You saw who I really was the moment you thought I had nothing. Her shoulders slumped. You tested me. Yes. And you set me up to fail. No, I corrected calmly. You failed the moment you treated marriage like an insurance policy. That landed hard. Tears gathered in her eyes. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. Because revenge isn't about destruction. It's about exposure. She exposed herself. I just removed the safety net. Daniel, she whispered. We could rebuild. I shook my head slowly. I already did. Her face broke slightly at that. Is there someone else? She asked quietly. No, I replied honestly. I'm just not interested in being someone's retirement plan. She laughed weakly through tears. You're cruel. No, I said calmly. I'm free. The conversation ended there. No yelling. No dramatic exit. Just two people sitting in the aftermath of a calculated gamble. She walked out of that cafe smaller than she walked in. Not financially. Emotionally. And I stayed seated for a few minutes after she left. Not celebrating. Not smiling. Just breathing. Because here's the truth nobody talks about. Revenge feels satisfying. But peace feels better. Months passed. I kept building. Quietly. And one evening, while reviewing contracts in my office, I realized something. The trust had done more than protect my money. It protected my standards. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't proving anything anymore. I had clarity. And that clarity was worth more than every property combined. Sophia eventually moved cities. Word was her new relationship didn't last. Something about financial disagreements. Patterns repeat. But I never reached out. Never checked her social media. Never entertained the what if. Because I learned something fundamental. When someone shows you they value you based on what you provide, remove the provision. And watch who stays. She didn't. And that told me everything. The mediation session wasn't the victory. It was the beginning of something darker. When Sophia signed the withdrawal papers, everyone in that room thought it was over. It wasn't. Because I noticed something in her eyes as she stood up. It wasn't defeat. It was calculation. She wasn't finished. She just realized she needed a different angle. And I was right. 2 weeks later, rumors started spreading in my business circle. Quiet ones. Whispers. Daniel hides assets. Daniel manipulates partners. Daniel's finances aren't as stable as they look. Nothing direct. Nothing traceable. Just smoke. And smoke is dangerous in business. Not because it burns you immediately, but because it makes people hesitate. One investor postponed a meeting. A supplier asked for stricter payment terms. Not major damage, but strategic friction. And I knew exactly where it was coming from. Sophia. She couldn't access my money. So she tried to attack my reputation. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't about greed anymore. This was about ego. She didn't just lose security. She lost control. And losing control was something she couldn't tolerate. I didn't confront her. I didn't threaten her. I gathered evidence. Every rumor traced back to one source. Vanessa. Her loyal amplifier. And Vanessa wasn't subtle. One careless voice memo forwarded to the wrong person. One careless text screenshot. One careless comment in a semi-private group chat. All it took was one mistake. And suddenly, I had proof of coordinated defamation. Not emotional speculation. Proof. Now here's the thing about power. Real power doesn't react. It waits. I called my attorney again. Not to sue immediately. To prepare. Cease and desist letters were drafted but not sent. Documentation was organized. Screenshots archived. Business contacts quietly reassured with financial transparency. Within a month, the whispers stopped. Because truth spreads faster when backed by numbers. Quarterly reports went public. Expansion announcements were made. A new logistics hub opened. Press coverage followed. And suddenly, the narrative flipped. Now people were asking, why did his marriage collapse so fast? Was she trying to cash in? Karma doesn't need assistance. It just needs patience. Then something unexpected happened. Sophia showed up at my office. Unannounced. Reception called me first. There's a woman here insisting she needs 5 minutes. I knew who it was before they said her name. I let her wait. 10 minutes. Then 15. Control is subtle. When she finally walked into my office, she wasn't polished. She wasn't glowing. She looked tired. Frustrated. Cornered. Why are you doing this? She demanded the moment the door closed. I stayed seated. Doing what? Turning people against me. I almost laughed. I haven't mentioned your name once. You think I don't know you're behind the investor briefings? I protected my reputation. She stepped closer to my desk. You're ruining mine. No, I said calmly. You did that? Her breathing became uneven. You could stop this. I already did. She stared at me. What do you want? That question again. What do you want? I stood slowly. Walked around the desk. Stopped a few feet from her. I wanted honesty, I said quietly. You wanted security. She looked away. I made mistakes, she muttered. Yes. But you didn't have to destroy me. I tilted my head. Destroy you? Her eyes flashed. No one trusts me anymore. People think I'm opportunistic. Silence. Because that's exactly what she had been. You're not a victim of me, I said softly. You're a victim of exposure. That hit her harder than shouting ever could. Her shoulders dropped. For a moment, she looked small. Then something shifted. Desperation. If I apologize publicly, would you clear my name? She asked. There it was. Transaction thinking. Even now. Everything negotiable. Everything strategic. I'm not your PR manager, I replied. Her jaw tightened. You're enjoying this. No, I said honestly. I'm finished with it. She searched my face for anger. For revenge. For ego. And she didn't find it. That's what unsettled her most. Because she couldn't manipulate calm. She couldn't leverage indifference. Daniel, she whispered, softer now. You don't have to be this cold. I looked at her steadily. This isn't cold. This is boundaries. Silence filled the office. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Then she asked something that surprised me. Was there ever a version of this where you didn't test me? I thought about it. Yes. There was. Before I saw the messages. Before I heard, I'm not staying if there's nothing. Before love turned into leverage. Yes, I said quietly. There was. Her eyes shimmered slightly. And for a split second, I saw regret. Real regret. But regret doesn't rebuild trust. It only acknowledges damage. She turned toward the door slowly. Then paused. If things had been different, she said softly. They were, I replied. You chose. She didn't respond. She just walked out. And as the door closed behind her, I realized something. She wasn't angry anymore. She was afraid of becoming irrelevant. Because the worst punishment for someone who treats relationships like investments is realizing the market has moved on without them. But here's the part she still didn't know. There was one final move left. Not legal. Not financial. Personal. And it wasn't about revenge. It was about legacy. Legacy. That's what it became about. Not money. Not reputation. Not even Sophia anymore. Legacy is different. It's what remains when the noise dies. After she left my office that day, something inside me shifted. The anger that had fueled my precision? Gone. The satisfaction of watching her miscalculate? Faded. What remained was a quiet question. What kind of man do I want to be when no one is watching? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. It's easy to win. It's harder to rise above winning. A week after her visit, I made a decision that had nothing to do with her, but would affect her more than anything else I'd done so far. I funded a foundation. Quietly. No press release. No social media campaign. A logistics training program for underprivileged young entrepreneurs. Warehouse skills. Supply chain education. Business fundamentals. Opportunity without leverage. Support without expectation. The trust, the same trust she tried to attack, would now allocate a fixed percentage of annual profit into that foundation. Permanent. Untouchable. That was my final restructuring. Because I realized something brutal. Sophia wanted access to wealth. But she never understood value. Value is created. Wealth is transferred. Two different things. And if I was going to build something lasting, it wouldn't just be balance sheets. It would be impact. 3 months later, the foundation launched publicly. Press coverage followed this time, not because I chased it, but because impact attracts attention. Daniel Harper announces Entrepreneur Initiative. Her name wasn't mentioned. But I knew she would see it. Everyone did. And then, the unexpected happened. Vanessa reached out. Not Sophia. Vanessa. Short message. She's not okay. I stared at the screen longer than I expected to. Not okay how? Financially? Emotionally? Socially? Vanessa called instead of texting again. She thought she could recover fast, Vanessa said. Find someone else stable. But word travels. People talk. I didn't respond immediately. She's embarrassed, Vanessa added. She feels like everyone sees her as transactional. Transactional. Accurate. but hearing it said out loud hit differently. She said you changed after the trust, Vanessa continued. No, I said calmly. I revealed. Silence. Then Vanessa asked something unexpected. Did you ever actually love her? The question lingered. I thought about rooftop proposals. Shared laughter. Late-night conversations before I knew the truth. Yes, I said quietly. I did. Then why didn't you just forgive her? Because forgiveness without accountability isn't healing. It's enabling. Because she wasn't sorry when she thought I was broke, I replied. Vanessa didn't argue. She just sighed. She misses the version of you that trusted her. And there it was. The real loss. Not money. Not lifestyle. Trust. And trust isn't something you can contest in mediation. Weeks passed again. I kept building. The foundation gained traction. Young entrepreneurs started sending messages. Grateful ones. Not because I was wealthy. Because I invested in them without expecting returns. And one evening, as I was leaving a warehouse site inspection, I saw a familiar car parked across the street. Sophia's. She wasn't hiding. She was sitting in the driver's seat. Watching. I walked over calmly. She rolled down the window slowly. I heard about the foundation, she said softly. I nodded. It's impressive. Thank you. She hesitated. Why didn't you ever talk about wanting to do something like that? I did, I said quietly. You just weren't listening. Silence. She looked smaller than I remembered. Less sharp. Less calculated. What if I wasn't as selfish as you think, she asked. I held her gaze. Then you wouldn't have left when things looked uncertain. Her eyes shimmered slightly. You don't know what fear does to people. I do, I said. It reveals them. That landed hard. She looked away. I thought I was protecting myself, she whispered. From what? I asked gently. Struggle. And you ended up losing stability anyway. Her breath hitched slightly. That wasn't cruelty. It was reality. Then she said something that shifted the air again. I'm in debt. There it was. The vulnerability. Not performance. Not strategy. Raw. My new partner made some investments that collapsed, she continued. I co-signed. My mind processed quickly. Pattern repetition. Seeking security externally instead of building internally. Why are you telling me this? I asked calmly. She swallowed. Because I don't know who else to tell. That sentence carried more weight than all her previous apologies combined. Not, can you help? Just, I don't know who else. For the first time since this entire saga began, the power dynamic shifted in a different way. Not leverage. Not dominance. Human. And in that moment, I had a choice. I could crush what remained of her pride. Or I could demonstrate something she never expected from me. Not revenge. Not rescue. Responsibility. I took a slow breath. You need financial literacy, I said calmly. Not another provider. Her eyes flickered with hurt. But I continued. There's a program launching next quarter through the foundation. It teaches investment risk and contract evaluation. She stared at me. You're offering me a class? I'm offering you tools. Silence. Long complicated silence. She could interpret it as insult. Or as dignity. I won't give you money, I added gently. But I won't watch you repeat patterns either. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Not this time. Because this wasn't humiliation. This was consequence. I don't deserve that, she said quietly. Probably not, I replied honestly. But growth doesn't require deserving. It requires deciding. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Not as a bank account. Not as a guarantee. But as a man who refused to be reduced. And for the first time, there was no calculation in her expression. Just reflection. But here's the thing. Redemption is fragile. And whether she would choose growth or repeat the cycle wasn't something I could control. What I could control was who I became after the betrayal. And that transformation was far more powerful than any revenge. The weeks that followed were strange. Sophia didn't contact me again directly. Not by phone. Not email. Not social media. Instead, I started hearing updates through mutual acquaintances. She was struggling financially, not disastrously, but enough to feel unstable. The new man she had tried to secure as a safety net was distant, disengaged. Small debts were mounting. Opportunities she tried to manipulate were slipping away. And here's the cruel irony, she had thought she could recover fast. She assumed influence and charm would rebuild her portfolio of security. But life has a way of revealing true character when the facade cracks. I wasn't gloating. I was observing. Because this wasn't about wealth anymore. This was about psychology. I realized something fundamental. The woman who married for money had never understood the one thing that can't be bought, self-respect, and the discipline to protect it. One morning, I received a formal letter in my office. No return address. Just my name, typed, neat. It was a challenge. Her lawyer claiming damages for emotional distress, absurd given the legal structure of the trust. Clearly, she was testing boundaries again. Testing me. Testing the system. I smiled quietly. Evidence organized. Communications documented. Trusts fully compliant. Her claims were trivial. She couldn't touch a thing. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I waited. Patience amplifies leverage. A week later, I saw her again. Not at the cafe. Not an event. She appeared at a small charity dinner, coincidentally where I was speaking about the Foundation's new program. She paused when she saw me. Her posture was poised, yet guarded. The smile was forced. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said softly. "Neither did I replied calmly. She hesitated. I wanted to talk." I nodded, letting silence fill the air. Let her feel the weight of it. "I've realized a few things," she began carefully. "About myself. About the decisions I made." I studied her quietly. Observing micro-expressions, the way her fingers gripped the edge of her clutch, the slight tension in her jaw. "I thought I knew how to manage risk," she continued. "But I see now. I was blind to the risks of my own choices." "I see," I said evenly. Her gaze dropped. "You didn't have to protect everything. You could have just told me." I shook my head slowly. "You married a man. Not a bank account. But you treated it the same." She flinched. Small, imperceptible, but I saw it. "I thought love was enough," she whispered. "Love isn't enough," I replied softly. "Not when it's measured by returns." Her eyes shimmered. Vulnerable. Raw. For the first time in months, she wasn't calculating. She wasn't performing. She was human. And that scared her. "You've built something remarkable," she said quietly. "Even after everything." I nodded. Not for revenge. Not for ego. For clarity. Silence. Her hands twitched slightly. She wanted to speak again. But she hesitated. "I don't know if I can fix this," she admitted finally. And in that admission, I realized something even more profound. Revenge doesn't always end in ruin. Sometimes, the greatest revenge is watching someone face themselves. Because the lessons they avoid are the ones that last the longest. I left the dinner that night unchanged. Calm. Collected. Free. Sophia? She didn't follow. She didn't call. She didn't manipulate. She was left to reflect, finally, truly reflect, on the person she had been, the choices she had made, and the boundaries she had violated. And that, more than any legal victory, more than any financial safeguard, was the ultimate shift in power. Because when someone only respects what they can take, the only true control is refusing to give it. Months passed. Sophia had disappeared from my daily life. Not physically, but psychologically, she was a ghost in my world, a constant reminder of calculation and misjudgment. And yet, I couldn't stop noticing the subtle echoes of her presence. A mutual acquaintance would mention, almost casually, that she'd been trying to re-enter certain business circles. Meetings she wasn't invited to, opportunities slipping through her fingers. Social invitations declined. Status diminished. She was chasing a version of security she thought she could reclaim, but the market of influence doesn't forgive those who gamble recklessly. One evening, I received an unexpected email. Subject: request for advice. From Sophia. No flourish. No charm. Just 5 words: "I need your perspective, Daniel." I read it twice. 3 times. The audacity. And yet, the opportunity. I didn't reply immediately. Patience is a tool. 2 days later, she sent a follow-up: "I've made mistakes. Can you help me understand?" Now the tone shifted. Vulnerability replaced arrogance. Hesitation replaced confidence. I crafted my reply carefully. Not an apology. Not a gift. Not an invitation to restore the past. I offered a lesson. A meeting. Purely educational. Strategic. The day she arrived, she wasn't prepared for the environment. My office had changed since she last saw it. Quiet. Organized. Evidence of silent power. She could feel it immediately. I greeted her calmly. "No business favors," I said softly. "No emotional discussions. Just clarity." She nodded, a mix of relief and tension. "I want to understand how I failed," she said quietly. I let that sink in. "Failure isn't just losing money," I began. "It's misunderstanding leverage. Underestimating boundaries. Ignoring self-worth. And assuming control where you have none." Her eyes flickered. Recognition. Realization. "I thought I could secure everything," she whispered. "I didn't realize what I was really taking from you." I leaned back. "What you were taking wasn't mine to give. And it never has been." She shifted uncomfortably. "Then why are you helping me?" Because, I said deliberately, education is the only path to prevent repetition. Not revenge. Not control. Just understanding. For the first time, she sat silently. Really silently. No posturing. No negotiation. Just presence. I continued. The problem with greed isn't money. It's perspective. You sought security in wealth. You treated relationships as assets. And you failed to see that trust and respect are not transferable. Her gaze dropped. I could see the weight of it. Shame. Reflection. The first real acknowledgement of the truth. Does it hurt, she asked softly, to know that I've been wrong? I considered it. Calmly. Not anymore. It only teaches. That was the final lesson I intended her to learn. Not financial ruin. Not public humiliation. Not defeat. But clarity. And the clarity was far heavier than any legal document, any trust, any asset. She left my office that day different. Not powerful. Not free. But aware. And awareness is the beginning of accountability, whether she accepted it or resisted. Because the ultimate revenge isn't about punishment. It's about letting someone confront themselves, and knowing they cannot manipulate or leverage you again. And as she walked out, I realized. Control isn't about what you own. It's about what you refuse to surrender. Weeks turned into months. Sophia's attempts to regain footing in business circles continued, but subtly, quietly, unsuccessfully. Her reputation had shifted, not due to me directly, but because of her own actions. People noticed patterns. Opportunism. Calculated charm masking insecurity. I wasn't gloating. I was observing. Learning. Appreciating the quiet poetry of consequence. One afternoon, I received a letter. Not from a lawyer, not formal. Handwritten. On cream stationery. My name, simple and centered, Daniel Harper. Inside, her handwriting shook slightly. I underestimated your boundaries. I misunderstood who you were. I see now the mistakes I made, the person I chose to be, and the impact of my decisions. I do not expect forgiveness, nor do I seek it. I only want to acknowledge that I understand. I stared at the page. Not anger. Not triumph. Not sadness. Calm. Clarity. Because here's the thing about revenge, patience, and boundaries. The real victory isn't watching someone suffer. The real victory is watching them face themselves. Her acknowledgement was the ultimate payoff. She had no access. No leverage. No power. Only reflection. Weeks later, I watched from my office window as a young entrepreneur from my foundation successfully negotiated her first deal. Confidence, clarity, integrity, traits that Sophia had tried to manipulate but never learned. I smiled quietly. Legacy isn't measured in money. It's measured in influence. In standards. In the way you protect your boundaries without losing yourself. And the final irony? The person who once treated relationships like investments, now had to see them as lessons. I didn't reach out. I didn't gloat. I simply continued building. Quietly. Powerfully. Without distraction. Because the ultimate revenge doesn't need performance. It needs patience. And now, for the first time since the marriage began, the story ended not with conflict, but with control. Control over one's life, one's choices, one's legacy. Sophia could reflect. She could learn. She could grow. Or she could repeat the same cycle. The choice, finally, wasn't mine. But my boundaries? Untouchable. And that, more than any legal maneuver or financial safeguard, was the true revenge. It was the moment I'd been waiting for. Not for revenge. Not for satisfaction. For final clarity. Sophia had been quietly trying to regain influence. Small business circles. Networking events. Casual meetups. She thought subtlety would give her leverage. That observation alone was proof of her pattern, calculation over conscience. I decided it was time to close the loop. Not with confrontation. Not with legal warfare. Not with public shaming. With presence. With legacy. A major industry gala had been scheduled, charity-focused, press-attended, key players present. I arrived early, my team already coordinating logistics quietly. My speech was prepared. Impact-driven, not self-serving. When Sophia walked in, she was radiant. Polished. Confident. A smile plastered on that hid the tension I knew was inside. She hadn't expected me to be center stage. To command the room. To have every conversation steered by people who respected the vision I had built. The first applause came before I even spoke, a subtle acknowledgement of credibility and influence. I took the stage. I spoke about the foundation. About opportunity. About empowering young entrepreneurs to succeed through knowledge, not luck. As I spoke, I scanned the room. Investors. Industry leaders. Media. All eyes on me. Sophia shifted uneasily in the crowd. She realized what she had lost. Access. influence, reputation, power, all quietly reclaimed. When I ended my speech, applause filled the room. I stepped down calmly. No arrogance. No gloating. Just presence. Control. Dominance earned, not forced. Later, at the after-party, I observed her attempting subtle engagement. Networking. Charm. Influence. But the subtle shifts in posture, the glances, the hesitation, all revealed her awareness of what she had missed. Someone approached me. "You've really built something extraordinary," they said. "It's amazing how much influence your foundation has created." I nodded quietly. Sophia overheard. She froze. Recognition in her eyes. The realization that my victory wasn't loud. It wasn't destructive. It wasn't chaos. It was quiet. Calculated. Effective. Later that evening, as I left, she approached. Tentatively. I see now," she said softly. "I misjudged everything." I studied her carefully. Calm. Controlled. "Yes," I replied. "And now you understand boundaries, consequences, and the power of patience." Her lips parted. A question, unasked. A reflection without words. "I'm done," I said finally. "Not with you, but with the past. And I hope you use this lesson wisely." She nodded. No manipulation. No negotiation. No plea. Just understanding. The ultimate payoff. Not humiliation. Not legal victory. Not financial domination. The most satisfying revenge is watching someone confront themselves. And knowing you no longer need to control or fight. Because power, real power, is not about taking. It's about standing unshakable. And that evening, as I walked away from the gala, the quiet sense of clarity, my life, my legacy, my boundaries, was worth more than any asset she ever tried to claim. Weeks passed after the gala. Sophia had vanished from my world again, this time quieter. No attempts to manipulate. No whispered rumors. No legal maneuvers. Just silence. It struck me how small it made her feel, not angry, not humiliated, just powerless. And that's what I had hoped for. Not revenge born from rage. Not chaos. But the silent lesson of boundaries and consequences. Meanwhile, my life expanded in ways she had never imagined. The Foundation's first cohort of entrepreneurs graduated, securing investments, launching startups, learning to navigate the business world with integrity rather than leverage. I watched their emails, their messages of gratitude. They didn't thank me for money, they thanked me for opportunity, guidance, and wisdom. That was wealth Sophia could never understand. One afternoon, a mutual acquaintance dropped an update. Sophia's new relationship had ended. Apparently, her partner realized patterns she couldn't hide. Opportunism. Calculation. A reliance on others' stability rather than creating her own. I didn't react. I didn't comment. I simply acknowledged internally what had always been true. You cannot control who learns your lessons. But you can control yourself. Then came the final note. A letter, brief, from Sophia. "Daniel, I've reflected on my choices. I understand the mistakes I made, the boundaries I crossed, and the consequences I ignored. I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't seek it. But I hope the lessons I've learned are real. I read it. No anger. No regret. Just acknowledgement. Finally. No confrontation. No manipulation. No ego. Just clarity. The story wasn't about punishment. It wasn't about wealth. It wasn't even about the trust. It was about boundaries. Integrity. The discipline to protect oneself. And in that discipline, I had achieved something far more profound than revenge, peace. I closed the letter. Sat back. Smiled quietly. The ultimate lesson was not in what she lost, but in what I never surrendered. Control over my life. My choices. My legacy. And that was the final, unshakable victory.